So, how long were you in the Army?
So I joined the Army in November of 1975, and I retired officially in the U.S. Army in September of 2015. 39 years.
Are you, so you are retired. Um, what was your rank when you retired?
So I retired last year in 2015 as they call it a full bird colonel, which would be this rank up here. And in those 39 years, I have held these ranks all the way down to private, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and then colonel.
What were some of your duties as being a colonel?
So as a colonel, as I finished my senior level leadership out, it was really, if I start at the senior level, when you're almost a general, you're really focused on policy, strategy, and leading large groups of soldiers. So when you look at how you want to influence a future war, you listen and review all the lessons learned, but you put doctrine in place, you put rules in place on how the future generation is going to fight for the younger generation coming up. So as a senior leader, you're really focused on what do we need to do for the next generation? What do we need to do for the next battle? What do we need to do for the next war? And really focus on those lessons learned. So I was more of a policy maker involving Japan right before last year when I retired. So that, and I won't say the country name, that's our enemy, but I'm sure most people can come to grips with a country that's close to Japan that would be an enemy of the United States, that we need to make sure that our forces are positioned that should something happen at a national level, that we're prepared to defend the United States from the Japan area of theater.
Okay. Have you ever served in combat or a conflict war zone?
Yes, I have been in 3 different conflicts. One was it was a peace accord, which was the Bosnia 1995, the Gulf War in 1991, the Iraq War in 2005. So 3 different type conflicts, 3 different tours.
What would be the hardest of those 3 tours?
I think by far the Iraq one, because it wasn't traditional warfare. As many people have seen in the news, the IEDs, the ISIS soldiers and the Taliban continue to use more and more roadside bombs to try and attack and disrupt the U.S. military mission. Because of those roadside bombs, the soldiers were exposed to these bombs and the horrors of war, losing limbs, seeing that type of bloodshed. When you see young soldiers losing limbs and having to come home. The good news is, in this last 20 to 30 years, we're saving 7 out of 10 lives because of medical advancements of 3M, Medtronic, and the likes, compared to the Vietnam era, which was most people lost their lives on the battlefield, close to 50,000 American soldiers in Vietnam. So that's the good news. The bad news is it's terrible on anybody emotionally to see bloodshed, especially when you see limbs flying based on an explosion.
What were you doing in Iraq then?
At that point, I was with the 4th Infantry Division as a senior officer that had the responsibility for protecting what we would say the convoys that had the highest level target. That's why they put the infantry in charge of them. And that highest level target on the roads were the fuel tankers, just like you would know on the interstate seeing a fuel tanker. The Taliban always wanted to try and blow one of those up because it made a statement, if you think of 50,000 gallons of explosions. So I was responsible for the protection of those convoys with my soldiers. We performed close to 70 missions. We were attacked 28 times, and we were able to successfully complete all of our missions, even though we did have several attacks that caused some severe explosions and some, I would say, minor to heavy combat to fight out of that and fight through the mission.
What would those attacks then look like?
So it's hard to describe if you haven't been there. And so if you get pinned down, in one example, you have gunfire from buildings on each side of you. In the case of one mission, we were in southwest Baghdad, apartment complexes on both sides. One of the tankers was exploded and cut off the final 3 vehicles that could get out of the combat zone, and we call it the hit zone. So you always want to push through the hit zone so that you get away from the threat. We were pinned down, 3 vehicles were pinned down, had a lot of gunfire, had an RPG, we call it, rocket propelled grenade, hit right in front of the vehicle. And there was close to a gun battle of close to 30, 40 minutes. We had reinforcements coming in. So, I mean, the military is very good at a quick reactionary force to come in and help anybody that's pinned down. We were able to get through that, but as you know, and I'm sure as you've seen movies, it's tense, it's very tense, and you see gunfire coming out of apartment complexes, and as a senior leader, you have decisions that have to be made in split seconds in order to protect your force. So that's one example. There could be another example. Could just be you're busting doors down, but that wasn't my responsibility. The whole focus of our responsibility for my team and my infantry soldiers was to protect the fuel tankers across Iraq.
What moment are you most proud of over the years?
I think reflecting back on 39 years, and my dad served in the military for 40 years and retired as a command sergeant major. I think the proudest moment for me was when you actually make full bird colonel, which is the rank I made. There's only 2% of the military that achieve that rank within the ranks. And getting that promotion, and my dad being able to see that I got that promotion before he passed was the proudest moment for me. It was pretty special, and knowing that he was able to be around to see me be promoted before he passed was a blessing, and that has to be the proudest moment for me.
What are you doing now that you have retired? Are you doing anything to still be a part of the military?
I am. So I've made a commitment to give back and try and help all returning Minnesota veterans. I established a foundation. It's called the Veteran Small Business Foundation, and we currently are working on a project called Project Got Your Back. And it's to help those younger veterans returning really help in their transition. Because as we as veterans know, the best way to get support and help is the grapevine, veteran to veteran. And these younger veterans, because they're technology based, they don't want to pick up a phone and call an old Vietnam vet or an older veteran. So we're basically taking an Angie's List type concept and automating that so that we can really expose the younger veterans to all the services that Minnesota offers to help in their transition going forward. We want every veteran to return home safe, transition safe, and have a productive life with their family.
So did that mean you transitioned well, or did your own experience influence that?
Yeah, I would have to say I'm very fortunate. The 2 employers during my deployments went out of their way to support me, which is not some of the horror stories that you hear for some returning veterans. And so because of a number of veterans calling me, talking to the different groups that I talked to, it was very apparent that I had an exceptional process, and that the general rule of thumb is that more people have troubles transitioning than what I had. So that caused me to have a passion to really focus on helping these veterans moving forward and be involved. It's all about involvement, proactive engagement, and helping these veterans.